Hey everybody, this is Alan, and I'm thinking very seriously of changing my name back to Bonsai by Alan, or Alan's Bonsai. Maybe something like Alan's Bonsai Adventure. I was going to call it Alan's Bonsai Creations, and then I realized there's another person who calls themselves Bonsai Creations. So, at some point, we're going from Woodcrest Nursery back to Alan's Bonsai. I started as Alan's Bonsai, and out of 9 billion people on the planet, with about 7 of them having internet, who would have thought there was another Alan doing bonsai? So there was an Alan in South America. So if you typed in Alan's Bonsai, the YouTube algorithm sent you to him, not to me, because you're arguing with a machine when it comes to the algorithm, and the machine doesn't know that I'm me. And so that was a little frustrating. I had people that I thought were fairly computer savvy who said they couldn't even find me at all. I never did come up in their feed when they searched for Alan's Bonsai. So I changed my name to Woodcrest because that was the neighborhood where I grew up in Chicago, in the town of Bensonville. But I've never really, it certainly has separated me from people with the name Alan that do bonsai, but I never really liked it, so I'm changing back. In the beginning, I also never had a QR code, but now I have a QR code. So if I approach someone in person, so like I go to a bonsai convention, or even like an art show, and I'll ask people to subscribe to my channel. It really doesn't matter what my channel is called, because they can just use their electronic device to scan the QR code, and boom, they're right there. So that's coming. Still trying to figure out a name. Anybody got a good name? Put it in the comments. I'm thinking Alan's Bonsai Adventure. So much for that. Today I'm going to feature this parrot's beak. And the genus of parrot's beak is Melina, but it's spelled with a silent G. And as the names of many, many, many different species, trees or animals, the name refers to a gentleman whose name was Melin. I guess the G was silent on his name too, I don't know. So it's spelled G-M-E-L-I-N-A, Melina. G is silent. And if you look at the closed captioning, the YouTube auto-generated closed captioning is going to spell it M-O-L-I-N-A, Molina. But that ain't it. Once again, you're arguing with the machine. So I'm also threatening to begin doing my own closed captions, because I need closed captions. My hearing is fine, but when it comes to YouTube videos, even watching movies, sometimes it just doesn't translate. So I can make my own closed captions, and they will be exactly the words that I'm actually saying, instead of some of the confusion that can be created by the YouTube self-generated captions. I have an itch. So, this is the very first parrot's beak that I ever bought. And I have a playlist on this tree that you can watch somewhere in there, somewhere. And I will also leave the playlist as a link at the very end of this video. And I bought this tree because I loved the hollow bark. And actually this hollow here, if we stick something down in there like a piece of wire, it goes all the way through. See right there? So that's pretty cool. And it's got nice movement, although you can't see much of it because it's so overgrown. And then the top is just a horrible thing. All twisted, much like it is now. See, this branch here is coming out of here, but it's shooting straight against the grain. Well, imagine a top where it was all like that, just everywhere. And I still have the top. And I featured it in some of the videos on the playlist. So if you want to go see just how ugly the top was. And I still have it. I haven't really done anything with it. Kind of like trying to keep it as a example of when you look at a tree, especially like a pre-bonsai at a convention. I only look for about the bottom third. What does the trunk look like? What does the movement look like? If the top is a horrible mess, I can chop that baby off and start over, and that's exactly what I did with this tree. When I did the initial styling, the tree was denser. We have our first main branch right here, and the second main branch was not that much higher, and it was a denser tree, fuller. It was pretty nice. I enjoyed working that tree, but this spring I decided to make it a taller, more open tree. And after I'm done trimming off all the excess growth that we see here, you'll see what I mean. So I fell in love with Parrot's Beak because they grow so fast, which means that they're very easy to style. They also pop with new growth just about everywhere. I mean, look at this one here. These pops here, and if we turn it around, these pops here, all these little pops here. None of those have anything to do with the design, but if I needed a branch, say like right here, I could let that branch grow and create a branch. So because they pop off of old wood and they grow so quickly and they're so easy to style, I just love them. And I want to talk about the pot a little bit too. The pot is a Sarah Rayner pot. And in 1998, I was able to go to Atlanta to see Kimura. And the convention was nothing but Kimura. He was the only headliner. And of course, he was fantastic, truly amazing. But one of the vendors there was Sarah Rayner. And I bought so many pots from her. I bought as many pots as I could carry back on the plane because I flew up there with my girlfriend. And actually, I bought another huge pot that would not fit in my luggage. So a couple of buddies of mine who had driven up there brought that pot back for me in their car because I just didn't have the space. But I just fell in love with her stuff. And as an interesting aside, Kimura worked on 3 huge trees for the demos, and then he also did workshops. And Sarah Rayner won one of those trees. Of course, we're talking, almost 20 years now. 17 years ago. But I was happy for her, that she won one of those trees. I didn't even put a raffle ticket in because I was already living in Zone 10 in Florida, so there was no way that the trees that he was working on were going to survive down here. But she won one of the trees, so I thought that was pretty cool. But if we do a close-up, just look at the detail on this pot. It's just so amazing. It is so cool. And I know there are a lot of American potters out there, but for my money, she is my favorite American potter. And so I'm so happy to still have these pots. And if you look at the playlist on this guy, you'll find that it was in a much deeper pot. And when it was a blockier, stockier tree, that deeper pot worked. I liked the way that the pot and the tree worked with each other. When it was a stockier tree, that deeper pot worked well. But once I decided to make it a more open tree, it definitely needed a shallower pot. And this pot is also a little bit longer, a little bit bigger. And so I think this pot works very nicely with this iteration of the tree. And right now we don't see much because of all the excess growth. But conventional wisdom says that the pot should be about as deep as the trunk is wide. And so this pot is a little bit shallower, but it works for me. And I love this Serrarena pot. I now have virtually all the Serrarena pots that I purchased in 1998 with trees in them. Because it was a while, I bought them all and really had no idea what trees they would hold. And it took a while to get them all. I think I do have one, or maybe two, that still are empty. But that's going to change soon. So now, the tree itself has first main branch right here. And let's take some foliage away so we can actually see the first main branch. So there it is. And that's about, I don't know, about the height of a pair of scissors. That's a highly technical measurement. So I'd say it's about 8 inches. So if we're working on the rule of thirds, which says that the first main branch should be 1/3 of the way up the tree from the soil level, then if this is 8 inches, then the tree should be 2 feet. And it's not quite 2 feet, so it has some growing to do. But there is another proportionality that I like to use more than the rule of thirds, and that is the golden mean. And that ratio is 1 to 1.6. So to make the math easier, let's just say we have a tree with a branch that's 10 inches from the soil level. Or if you live in the entire rest of the planet, other than the United States, let's say 10 centimeters above the soil. So the rule of thirds says that if you have a branch that's 10 units of measurement above the soil, then the tree should be 30 units of measurement above the soil, regardless of whether it's inches or centimeters. The golden mean works on the ratio of 1 to 1.6. So that means if you have a branch 10 units of measurement from the soil, then the tree should be 26 units of measurement high. So the golden mean kind of compresses everything. A tree that's following the golden mean is a little shorter. The branches may be a little closer together. But I like to use that because I like the way it looks when the tree is a finished product. The golden mean really works well for me. I like that. And I'm not measuring. It's just an eyeball thing. It's just kind of like, okay, that looks good. And then, okay, that looks good. And so it's not, when I'm actually practicing styling my trees, it's not a highly technical thing. It's just more about the eyeball and the way your heart feels when you look at a tree and you say, okay, I really like that. I think this branch should go here to create the proportionality that I want. So if you're unfamiliar with the golden mean, that's the ratio, 1 to 1.6, versus the rule of thirds, which is basically 1 to 2. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's actually do some work on this thing. And as always, the first main branch should also be the first growth emanating from the trunk. So since the last time that I trimmed this guy, we have all this excess growth coming from down in here. So all that comes off. I can probably just rub these little guys off. You may as well cut them clean. Okay, now if we look here, you can see that there are two much smaller branches right here and right here that are coming from the trunk directly below the first main branch. So they also come off. And they have just suckered. And Parrot's beak is very prone to doing that. Okay, so now we have a nice clean trunk. And you can see there's a lot of scars on this tree because it went through some major periods of growth and reduction. You know, grow a branch out really long and then chop it way back to get the trunk thicker. This scar right here was another main branch on the stockier version of this tree. So since we're in the back here, this is the back branch, and it's in great position, but you see it's doing some crazy stuff. I want all my growth to be moving outwards, and this branch is shooting back against the grain, then it's going this way, so that guy can come off entirely. And I'm going to shorten some of this up into here. And then we have another branch here that is actually coming back against the grain. So I'm going to take it off. And then just shorten the rest of this. So there's our back branch. Now it's a nice pad. Nice full, getting pretty decent ramification. So there's our back branch. And also this tree has some wire, because I wanted to wire up the apex, and I'm noticing perhaps a tiny little bit of it, the bark beginning to grow into the wire. So I think I'm going to take the wire off. My philosophy on wire: just take it off before you get really nasty scars. And if it hasn't held the branch where you want, then just put the wire on. Put it back on, usually at a later date. I would much rather avoid wire scars and have to wire again than keeping it on until the branch is set. And actually I think that branch set pretty well, and there's some tiny little wire scars, but they will be of no consequence. And actually we're still looking at the back of the tree for one thing. So now here we go. Let's get rid of, here's another one that's shooting straight across the trunk from the first main branch. And then there's this one here. And then these two are coming from, I left a little bit of growth in the front, just to kind of give it some visual weight. I don't want that to really be all that long. It's just a little tuft of growth right there, which could possibly come off entirely. And then for the rest of the first main branch, just shorten this stuff up to create the pad yet again. And in the future I may want this guy to come down and be more like in there. Now we're starting to see the trunk line a lot better. So second main branch is here, and once again, just, what was that? Just remove all the excess growth. I want them to be a little longer, so I'm going to leave him a little long. And once again, it could use a little wire. Wire these guys both down like that. That will give the tree a much better impression of age. Young trees have their branches angled up because they're growing vigorously towards the sun. Older trees, as the branch actually becomes heavier and heavier, it begins to become more horizontal. I have huge oak trees around my house, and I have one tree that grows over my roof, and I have to keep that thing trimmed back because the new growth that emerges will weigh the branch down that's over the roof, and the new branches will actually begin to rub on the roof if I don't keep up on it. So bonsai are way too small for the weight of the branch to actually weigh anything down, so that's why you use wire. That's why I use wire. So now we're just continuing. And this is still a young tree, and the reason that you know is because it still has a lot of leaves on the trunk itself. An old mature tree, all those leaves are gone, and all of your foliage is on the branches themselves, and the foliage on the trunk disappears. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little tiny bitty, it's a little bitty wire scar. Okay, it's coming along. And then here's the next branch, another branch coming out of the outside of a curve, but the only new growth on the entire branch is shooting straight at us right here. So it comes off. And you know, if I want the canopy in here, I want this guy to be a little bit longer. I left these two a little longer because I'm thinking of making this tree even wider, you know, out into here and out into here over time. So then we've got a little bit more leaf reduction to do here. Not reduction, removal. So we can see the line of the tree all the way to the apex. And as you can see, it just really has nice movement. This guy here is, like I said, your typical young growth that's shooting straight up. And I don't know if I really need it in front like this, but I am going to shorten it. I'm going to shorten it considerably. We have another little tuft of growth right here that can take its place, so I think I may just remove it entirely, because that guy can take its place. And then I think, so I could take it to here, I could chop all this off and make that the new leader. But for now, I think I'm going to leave it like this and like this. And because they grow so quickly, if I choose to make this the leader, you know, I can regrow a top in pretty quick time. These things grow so fast, which is why I love them. You know, and I'm blessed by being, I don't know, maybe blessed and cursed. Right, isn't that the case? By being in zone 10 in Florida, where it gets almost no freezing, and so I have a huge long growing season, which means development on my trees can occur much more quickly than if you were in, I don't know, Virginia, Ohio, Chicago, where I'm from. So now visually we see there's there's still kind of like what I call a glob right here, but that's the back branch. And I'm not trying to make this tree show ready, but if I was, I'd be cutting off all this downward growth. And the first main branch would be completely exposed with only growth growing up or out, and everything coming down would be gone. Same with all the other branches. However, I'm really thinking that that's looking very nice. So if you watch the playlist where this tree was a much stockier tree, like I said, there was a branch here and it was much stockier, it was lower. It was a nice tree and it worked well with the deep pot. But I'm really liking the way this guy is now starting to turn out. So I like my pads of foliage, space in between. I always remember John Naka. You know, why do we have space in between? And John Naka would say, is to let the birds fly through. I love that. John was quite an amazing character. Considered the foremost bonsai artist in the country when he was alive. But he was also a joker. He was quite the comedian. I was also blessed to be able to meet him and watch him work on numerous occasions. So there you go. Parrot's beak. Now if we look up here, the taper up in here is pretty low. The distance, you know, the thickness of this trunk here is not much different, but that will work itself out in time. I love the taper this way, and my branches are looking good, so I'm really liking the way this tree is turning out. So there you go. My very first Parrot's beak in its new iteration as a taller, thinner, you know, probably what you would call a more feminine tree. And so future work on this tree is to just get the pads thicker and bring them out further. This pad here, create even smaller pads up here. That's what really gives you the impression of a really old tree. Trees with just a lot of glob, foliage, those are young trees. Older trees have defined branches that you can see as defined branches. And that space in between is so important. It's kind of like painting, you know, if you remember Bob Ross, the painter on public television. He was always talking about, in order to have light, you have to have dark. And so, in bonsai, the analogy to that is, in order to have branching, you have to have negative space between those branches. So thank you so much for watching. This is Alan from something like Alan's Bonsai. I'm still Woodcrest right now. I'm hemming and hawing about how to change my name. But if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And you know, this thing grows so fast right now. It's what, the 11th of July. By the 11th of August, it'll be right back to where it was when I started. But that's okay, because the more it grows and the more you cut back and the more it develops and the more you can select branches, the more mature the tree will look. So I truly appreciate everyone who's subscribed. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. And at the end of this video, you'll be able to click a link on the playlist from this guy, where you can see, I think there's 5 or 6 videos from the tree's inception, which also includes the top part that I chopped off many years ago. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.